So what is the difference between a martial art and a sport? Is that the question? Okay, so this ain't no short answer quiz. Let me start by saying this. I'm not trying to tell you what path to take. That decision's up to you. Your values, what's important to you, what you believe in, yada, yada, yada. That's your decision. I'm only explaining the path that I'm trying to follow and why. So, I want to be clear about that. The difference between, martial art, sport. First, it's important to understand that those are not the same thing. They are not similar things. In fact, they are diametrically opposite things. One of our foundational principles is form follows function. And in a way, this is another manifestation, another example of that foundational principle. Form follows function. Basically, that means your why is the how of your what. So let's consider the function of sport and the function of martial art, and what's the same, what's different. A sport is an athletic contest. It's a competition, right? It's an athletic contest in which the outcome, the score, is kept, noted, recorded. In other words, the final score is the point of an athletic contest. Who won? They don't care about anything else. I mean, yes, see the game last night? Yeah, who won? Right? So it's product oriented, right? The point of the sport, it's all about the product. It's all about the finished score. Who won? Sport, therefore, is always comparing yourself to somebody else. I beat Joe, Joe beat me, comparing yourself to other people. I think that spending a whole lot of time comparing yourself to other people may not be the wisest use of your limited time on earth. Sport is about feeding your petty ego. I beat Joe. I beat Sam. I beat everybody, right? That's all your petty ego talking. And I have to ask, why? Does beating Joe make you feel adequate now? Less fearful? Does it make you feel like you're alive, or that you have lived, or that you're immortal now? See, because if you need to beat Joe, one of the things I notice about people is that people need that competition. They need to feed that petty ego. It's never enough. That petty ego is always hungry. You know how many Joes there are in the world? You can't beat them all, man. And even if you did, so what? So what? On this day, at this moment, I was better than Joe. Yeah. What does that get you? Anyway, okay, so what's the purpose of a martial art? I submit that the purpose of a martial art is to enable you to act adequately and appropriately in the present moment, in every present moment. The way to do that requires the extinction of the petty ego. Whereas sport is all about feeding the petty ego, martial art is about starving it to death, you know. The way to act adequately and appropriately in the present moment, despite conditions, situations, or circumstances, depends on your ability to see the true nature of things. Your ability to see the true nature of things depends on your ability to know yourself, right? To know your true nature. And to let go of your petty ego, because you're not going to know your true nature as long as you cling to your petty ego. So while a sport is product-oriented, a martial art is process-oriented. We train to live in the present moment. So the purpose behind what you do, the why behind your what, determines the how. If you're training to win an athletic contest, everything serves that purpose. Everything you do serves that purpose. If you were training to live adequately and appropriately in the present moment, everything you do serves that purpose. There was a time when fencing, the sport fencing, lay a lot closer to verisimilitude than it does now. If you look at the fencing rules, someplace in there it says, or at least used to say, that the organization of fencing is in order to simulate as closely as possible a frank and courteous encounter. Now, frank and courteous encounter, they're talking about a duel. Right? They're talking about a real fight. And they tried to remain as true as that as they could. There is always some degree of artifice in practicing even real combat, because there is there's a giant conflict between safety and realism, you know? Self-defense class. When the chips are down, you're going to gouge the guy's eyes, crush his throat, rip off his testicles, and break his knees. How are you going to practice that? You know? You got to spar? Is that it? You know, there are people who tell me that, sparring is more real than kata. You know, kata or etudes, I like to call them in fencing. That kumite is more real than kata. No, because there are things in kumite that you cannot do. I cannot gouge my opponent's eyes out in kumite. I can sure as hell do it in kata. So because if you understand the way your subconscious mind works, this is how we train the subconscious mind, by simulating, by simulating what we're doing. You don't have to actually do it in real life, because your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between reality and visualization. So this is why very often kata is actually much more realistic than sparring. Just a little footnote. So we have these two quite different paths, the sport and the martial art. And you have to decide which one to do. Here's the deal. Never try to ride more than one horse at a time. You can train to feed your petty ego, or you can train to exterminate your petty ego, but you can't do both at the same time. So you have to decide which one you want to do. Whatever your values, needs, emotions, and whoever the hell you are, all that stuff that's tangled up in there, you're gonna have to sort that out and make a decision. However, I believe, I submit that you should be honest about what it is you're doing. If it's an artifice, if it's a sport, if it's a contest, and all that entails, then say that. Be honest about it. And if it's martial art, then be honest about that. Don't pretend you're doing something that you're not. Don't pretend to be something that you're not. I think that is really important. I think it's important to you yourself. And I think it's important in terms of the impact you have on other people in the world. Fencing is not very important. On the world stage, from a global perspective, how important is that? Here's the thing. Somebody a lot smarter than me once said, you can see the entire whole of creation in one grain of sand. That is, you can extrapolate to the macrocosm from any microcosm. Right? It's like DNA. Right? In every cell, DNA, you take one cell of something, get that DNA, extrapolate that one cell to a brontosaurus, right, or whatever you got. So, fencing is a microcosm of human society, human organization, what's going on in the world. And whether you're fencing or whether you're an artist or a musician or whether you're a shoemaker or whether you work in a factory or a mechanic, I don't care what it is that you do, no matter what your field is, I think it is extremely important within that field to stand for truth, to tell the truth, to make sure the truth is understood and known. Because it may seem like a little thing. It may seem like a very little thing, after all. What does it matter who drinks from what drinking fountain? What does it matter where a woman sits on a bus? But it can matter. And you never know what the effect is going to be of your standing for truth in one tiny little environment, one small place, one insignificant little activity may have an effect by ripple to a whole lot of other things. I think it's important that you have that integrity. I think it's important to all of us that you have that integrity. That's just my opinion.